So we were talking about order qualifiers and order winners. Order qualifiers means the minimum eligibility. For example, if you have to apply for a position wherein the minimum eligibility is that you have to be an MBA with 5 years of experience. So that is the eligibility condition. It doesn't mean that necessarily anybody an MBA and with 5 years of experience would be selected. So there will be an interview, could be a process of entrance exam, whatever, and then finally the person will be selected. And the interviewer will see that what kind of winning qualities you have, what kind of extra qualities you have, whether you will be fitting in our job or not. So similarly, when you make a product, there are certain things which are order qualifiers. That means basic competitive priorities that a product must meet to even be considered for purchase. So generally it is represented by features shared by all competitors in a given market segment or market niche. But what are order winners? That means you have certain competitive priorities that distinguish your offerings from your competitors. So as we were talking about just now, it could be a quality, it could be a new technology which you are using which nobody can match, it could be your cost. You are giving the best quality but at a comparatively lower cost than your competitors, or you are giving the delivery much earlier than your competitors can. So those kind of qualities, that is competitive edges, can become the order winners for you. So that decides that the company will be successful or not. So therefore we can very well infer that operations management play a very important role in deciding whether your products and services will be successful or not. So ultimately it helps your marketing department, because marketing department will work day and night to secure orders. But if you are not matching the quality, if you are not matching the other ingredients, you may not be successful. Okay, next, as we were talking about, productivity is very important. So the ultimate aim of operations management is to work on their productivity. So as we were saying, what is productivity? As you can see on the slide, it is outputs upon inputs. So output is basically your maybe say number of products produced, that is your output. What are your inputs? When you say input, you use labor, you use machines, you use electricity, you use raw materials. So therefore, a ratio of output to only one input, when we say, it is called partial productivity. For example, you are only comparing your labor input to your output. Or for example, you are comparing your electricity consumed to the output. So that becomes a partial productivity measure. When we say multi-factor measure, so it is a ratio of output to some inputs. So you are using 2 or 3 inputs in comparison to your outputs. But when we say total productivity measure, it means it is the ratio of outputs to all the inputs. Whatever inputs you are using and you are comparing this with your output, then this becomes your total productivity measures. We will see it with an example. So I'll just show you a slide which is showing you the labor productivity. It says that assume 2 workers paint 24 tables in 8 hours. So that means whatever are our inputs, one worker generally work for 8-hour shift. So 2 workers means 2 into 8 hours, 16 hours of labor you have used. Right? So that means in 8 hours you are producing 24 tables. So output is your 24 tables and inputs is 16 hours. So I am comparing my productivity with respect to labor. So labor productivity is equal to output, which is 24 tables, and input is 16 hours. So 24 upon 16 is equal to 1.5 table per hour. Okay, so 1.5 becomes the productivity, labor productivity. Next, I want to show you the example of multi-factor productivity. So in this slide, I will be showing you that, for example, we are saying that 200 units are produced, they sell for say $12 each. and material cost is say $6.50 per unit, and 40 hours of labor were required at $10 an hour. So suppose my labor cost is $10 an hour. So your output is what? 200 units. So we have converted into the currency. So we are assuming the currency as dollar. So 200 into 12. So because 1 unit is of for $12. So 200 into 12 we will multiply. Similarly, we will divide it by material cost, that is 6.50 into 12, and similarly the labor. So finally what you have got is 1.4 is the productivity. So you have converted them into currency. So 1.4 is the productivity. So how do you interpret this 1.4? What is the meaning of this 1.4? Well, ideally it's very difficult to say 1.4 unless and until I have two things to compare. Let's say I am comparing the productivity for a particular month is 1.4, multi-factor productivity. For the subsequent month, I want to compare whether the productivity is 1.4, if it is more than 1.4, if it is 1.5, 1.6, that means my productivity has increased. But if it is less than 1.4, I will say that my productivity has reduced. That means I am producing either same output with more inputs, or if productivity has increased, that means maybe I am producing same output, but I am using less inputs, or I am producing more output. The inputs will also increase, but the inputs are not increasing in the same proportion as my outputs are increasing. So then we say that our productivity has increased. So let's see in this slide. So this is what it's saying, that you have to compare to previous measures, that is maybe last week, or to another benchmark, or you can compare your productivity with another industry. So you should have a reference point to compare the productivity. So generally in companies, when people buy shares of companies, they also see the productivity of the company, whether it is increasing with quarter to quarter. They see the productivity. They see productivity in terms of the revenues generated by the company, in terms of profits generated by the company. So productivity can also be measured in terms of revenues and profits also, in the case of stock market. So if you see in this slide, now there is another measure which I am introducing, which is called productivity growth rate. So here we are saying that it can be used to compare a process productivity at a given time, say P2, to the same process productivity at an earlier time, say P1. For example, in the last month the productivity was P1. Let's say in the subsequent month the productivity is P2. So how I can compare the two productivity? We call it as a productivity growth rate. So this is equal to P2 minus P1, that is subsequent month productivity minus previous month productivity, divided by previous month productivity, that is P2 minus P1 upon P1. So you will come to know whether your growth rate is positive or your growth rate is negative. Now let us see this example in this slide, wherein we are saying that last week a company produced 150 units using 200 hours of labor. This week the same company produced 180 units using 250 hours of labor. Now at the hindsight it will be very difficult to say whether productivity has increased or not, because the output has increased from 150 to 180, but the number of hours have also increased from 200 to 250. So has the productivity increased? So let us put it. First of all, we will calculate the productivity of first. So if you see in this slide, P1 is equal to 150 units divided by 200 hours. So it comes out to 0.75 units you have produced in 1 hour. Second month's productivity, let's say, is 180 as given in our example, divided by 250 hours. So this is 0.72 units. So basically your productivity has reduced, although it's very nominal reduction, but it has reduced. So if you put this in the formula of growth rate, so P2 minus P1 upon P1 is equal to 0.72 minus 0.75 divided by 0.75 is equal to minus 0.04. So when you convert it into percentage, so this becomes minus 4% growth rate. For a large organization, minus 4% growth rate is an appreciable number. It's not small. So decrease of growth. So therefore, the operations department could be answerable. So therefore, you can measure your productivity like this in your organization. Now let us talk about product design, service design, because you also have to design your product, what kind of product you want to produce in your organization. So what is process design or product design? So we are saying that process of deciding on the unique characteristics of a company's product and service offerings is called the product design. So it serves to define a company's customer base, image, competition and future growth. So basically in the last session also we talked about that there are companies which produce tangible products, there are companies which produce intangible products, or they are service companies. For example, a bank is not producing any product, it provides you banking services. An insurance company provides you services. So we discussed in the last lecture also that tangible offerings, you can measure them, you can test them, whereas in services they are intangible. You only feel the product. There is a sensory, aesthetic and psychological benefits of services. So therefore, it has got strategic importance because product design is very important. So step by step, how this idea of product comes in the company's mind. So first of all, there will be an idea development. A need is identified and a product idea will be there to satisfy the needs of the market, and then those kind of ideas are put together. So sometimes an idea comes that yes, we should build this product because it will meet the market's need. And then secondly, you have to do the product screening. So you have to evaluate your initial ideas, and a lot of brainstorming is done. A lot of other processes are there to screen the product, and then based on that some preliminary designing of that product is done and you do the testing. And many times the companies build a prototype. Prototype development is there. So prototype means a small miniature version of that product is made, and then you do market testing on that product. You do a test marketing, and then the companies do the final designing of that product, and then you set your product characteristics and service characteristics. So how do you do the idea development? You have to find your target customers, you have to do customer surveys, there are focus groups, you do benchmarking. What is benchmarking? Benchmarking means that there is some best quality product available by your say competitors. You study those product, you study that design of that product, you study those market practices being followed by the competitors. So as it is written in our slide also, studying best in class companies from your industries or others, and you compare their practices and performance to your own. So you try to make your processes, your systems at par with those competitors' products. That is called benchmarking. Then idea development, there is another field called reverse engineering. What is reverse engineering? Many times you take some product and you dismantle those products, and then you do a reverse. Many times, we first of all we do the designing and then we make a product. Here the product is already made and you are trying to uncover, you are trying to decipher how the designing would have been done for this product. For example, in this slide, if you see, we have tried to define reverse engineering, disassembling a competitor's product and analyzing its design characteristics and try to know how it was made. So this is another way, this is another technology in the world which is called reverse engineering, through which the idea is developed, how to make a product. So then you have to do the product in screening. You have to understand, how you do the test marketing, as we said. Does the market people are able to accept this product or not? Then you have to also see that whether this product pricing is as per the expectation of the market or not. So as we said earlier, prototypes are built, they are tested. Many times you are working on software, you have to remove the bugs. As you remove the bugs, similarly, when you do the product testing, you try to know what are the problems in this product, you try to rectify those problems, and you redesign your products, or designs are refined. And then you come to the final design of your product. Then finally your specifications are set, and then you develop the processing and service delivery instruction for your product, and you guide the equipment selection for your product. And then finally you negotiate the contracts with suppliers and distributors. Now there is something called break-even analysis. When you are making your product, you have to sell the product. You have to sell the product in the desired quantity so that you at least achieve break-even. What is a break-even quantity for a company? So break-even quantity is that point where you neither make a profit nor make a loss. So if you see this slide on your screens, here we are trying to show x-axis and y-axis. On x-axis we are trying to show the quantity in terms of units, and on the y-axis we are trying to show the cost as well as the revenues. So first of all, you are seeing on this, there is a graph called total revenues. So at zero quantity, your revenue will be zero. That means your sales are zero. As you increase your quality, your sales are increasing, so your revenues are also increasing. Again, please see this slide. Again, I am putting this slide before you. The second line on this graph is of total cost. So why this total cost line is starting from, it's not starting from zero, it's starting from another point. And there is a horizontal line which is showing it as a fixed cost. So in any organization, there are certain costs called fixed costs. That means, for example, even if you run a small shop, there will be some fixed cost, whether you do any sale or not. You are doing some zero sales, but there will be some fixed cost. For example, you are paying some rent for that shop. So irrespective of the fact that you do some sales or not, you have to pay that fixed cost. That is rent. You have to pay, you are sitting in the shop, so there is some electricity consumed. Your lights, your fans, your coolers or ACs, whatever. So that is the fixed cost which you are incurring. So that doesn't matter whether you are selling more, less, or no, you are not selling anything. That is your fixed cost. You have some employees whom you are paying the salaries. So whether you are not doing any business or you are doing very large business, there are some minimum number of employees for which you have to pay the salary. So those become your fixed cost. So therefore, irrespective of the quantity, again you will see this slide, irrespective of the quantity sold, this fixed cost is a horizontal line. So which the cost you are incurring, your business is incurring. Then there is another cost called variable cost. Variable cost is the cost which is incurred the more you sell, the more quantity you produce, the more cost you bear. That is called variable, because that cost varies with the number of items produced or number of items sold. For example, if you have a factory, in the factory the more number of, suppose you are manufacturing some pens, so the more number of pens you produce, the more raw material you will be using for those pens. So the more electricity you will be consuming. So there will be some basic electricity bill which is your fixed cost, but the electricity unit will be more, it will be consumed the more product you produce, the more raw material will be used. There will be some labor which is fixed, irrespective of the quantity you produce, you have to give them some wages and salary, but there could be some extra labor you can hire if there is more order. So that becomes your variable cost. So fixed cost plus variable cost becomes the total cost. So once again you come to, you will see on this slide So therefore, there is a total cost. So what is break-even point? When my total revenues is equal to my total cost, it becomes the break-even point. So the point where these two lines are crossing each other, that point in middle is called the break-even quantity. So if you draw a dotted line on the x-axis, so it is written Q, break-even. So this quantity you must make or sell. If you are a production unit, you have to say that this minimum quantity I need to make and I need to sell in order to achieve no profit, no loss kind of a situation. And if you sell anything or if you produce anything below this point, on this graph, once again I will show you, on this graph, any quantity below this break-even point is a loss point. And this area above this break-even point is known as the profit area for you. Please, we will show you this slide once again. Yeah. So this area below the break-even point is the loss point. If you sell any quantity or you make any quantity below this point is the loss point. Your business will make a loss, and above this will make a profit. So I'll try to show you now through a formula. So just see this break-even analysis. This is very important for operations management, for economics, for financial management. This topic is very, very important. So we are writing over here on this slide, total cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable costs. So variable cost, fixed cost are the same irrespective of the quantity, but variable cost, the more quantity you produce, the more will be the total variable cost. So variable cost multiplied by quantity. That is why we have multiplied by quantity. So TC is equal to fixed cost, that is F plus variable cost into quantity. And what is revenue? Revenue is equal to selling price into quantity. So my total revenue for my business will be whatever is my selling price per unit when I multiply it by number of units sold, that is revenue. So break-even point will be total cost is equal to total revenues. So we have used the formula. So when we solve this formula, so the Q is equal to fixed cost divided by selling price per unit minus variable cost per unit. So it becomes a formula. So suppose you want to calculate what is the break-even quantity for my business. So you have to know what is the fixed cost of your business divided by selling price per unit minus variable cost per unit. So let us see with an example here. Let us say a firm estimates that the fixed cost of producing a line of footwear is $52,000 with a $9 variable cost for each pair produced. So they want to know if each pair of footwear sells for $25, how many pairs they should sell to break even. And another part of this question is they are saying if they sell 4,000 pairs at $25 each, how much profit will they make? So what we will do, simply we will put it in the formula. Fixed cost is given in the question, which is 52,000 divided by you can say selling price minus variable cost. Selling price is given $25 minus variable cost is given in the question 9. So when you solve it, you arrive at your answer. Similarly, profit also you can calculate total revenues minus total cost. So total revenue selling price per unit into quantity minus total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost into quantity. So just put the figures and you will get the profit, which is $12,000. So this is how you can calculate, and for a business it is very important to know the break-even point. So I hope this will be very useful for you, and this will set the course of action for the further topics of operations management. Now there is another term which we use in operations management, which is called design for manufacture, DFM. What is design for manufacture? This is a new concept which has come in the last few years in operations management. Here we say that we minimize the number of parts which we are using to manufacture any product. You use common parts or standardized parts. Use modular design. Avoid the need of tools. Simplify operations. In the first lecture of operations management which you had with me, I had given this example. Today, when you buy a car, I had given this example that when you buy a car, earlier, there was a very huge toolkit. Now the toolkit is very small with one or two spanners or one or two keys only, because all the bolts in the car are of same size. So a layman, it will be easier for a layman not to, because a layman cannot find out, which key to use for which kind of nuts and bolts. So therefore, they try to use common or standardized parts. So that is called minimize the number of parts. So you will have to deal with less number of suppliers, you will have to deal with less number of components, etc. Modular design, use modular design. These days you must have heard the word modular kitchens. So basically what you are doing, you are separating each part, each shelf from each other, and therefore each shelf is different. You just pull out that shelf and you put your tools, etc., your kitchen tools over there. Similarly, in any component which you are making a car, you are making a refrigerator, you are making a washing machine, you are making an aeroplane, you have to use modular design so that the design is not complicated. You have a few consolidated components only. So for example, if you see in this picture, there are first two parts wherein you are using, different, you can say, parts over there, but in the third and fourth, you have combined those parts together, so that this is one assembly instead of, three or four parts together. So there will be chances of breakage, there will be chances of error and faults. So that is called design for benefit. It will have lower cost and higher quality. So with this, I hope I have given you a good insights into the designing of facilities. So we have covered various points. We have covered design for manufacture, we have covered break-even points, we have covered productivity, we have covered product designing, idea development, how to select a product. We have also talked about competitive advantages for a organization, and we will be covering the rest of the portions in the next series of our lectures. So till then, goodbye. Thank you.